protesting too much. With us, we have national affairs analyst for NBC News and MSNBC, John Hallman, national political reporter for NBC News, Carol Lee, political writer for the New York Times, Nick Confessori, and joining us at the table, member of both Select Committee on Intelligence and the Judiciary Committee, Democratic Senator Kamala Harris of California.
But the senator, I overheard the senators in New York for very, very pressing state business.
What's that? Oh, goodness. What's that?
Our daughter, Ella, is a freshman at Parsons.
All right. How's that going?
Yeah, she loves it.
Does she love it?
She loves it.
Parsons is great.
It's such a great school, and you know they're teaching every. I mean, she's an artist and she draws, but she's interested in design, and they're talking about climate change and how that's going to impact the art of design.
Well, they go deep there, don't they?
Place.
But I mean, the great thing about their curriculum is they really want to base it in reality, and they want these kids who are artistic to actually apply their talent to what's going on in the world today. So
Very
it's great
good.
to be here.
Congratulations.
How do you think American history, the arc of American history, may have changed if Devin Nunes had actually gone to Parsons? Yeah, exactly. So
she's still got a sense of humor, and she works out of Washington.
So we have a lot to talk to you about, but let's start with the Nunes Memo. It comes out, Republicans are breathlessly suggesting that this is going to change everything. People are going to go to jail. We hear people in Fox News saying it's worse than Watergate. They've got a little button they press. It just says, worse than Watergate. And it comes out, and it's really much ado about nothing. You saw what Trey Gowdy said, who actually, unlike the chairman, Trey Gowdy actually read the underlying intel that was the basis of this memo, and he said there's just nothing there that suggests Bob Mueller is...
And he's leaving.
So what happens?
Well, first, I mean, I think there's so much about this process that causes us to quote Shakespeare. But the reality of it is that I think the significance, really the gravitas of the significance of the memo is the disintegration, frankly, of our process. People are playing politics with our process. And when it comes to classified information, we have to understand that we should not be weaponizing it, that we have to have integrity, that the Russians, I think, frankly, are sitting back eating the popcorn watching this. Right?
Having a great time, enjoying this.
Having a great time, and let's remember
this is their best
the
case
underlying
scenario.
issue.
Right.
An adversarial country interfered in the election of the President of the United States.
And he's worried about vindicating himself.
And we cannot lose sight of that. We cannot lose sight of the fact that the intelligence community has been unanimous in finding that to be true. That we do know the underlying reason, among many, is that they want to interfere in the American public's confidence and trust in our government and our democracy.
But by the way, yes, they interfered in the election. They actually interfered in this debate. Hashtag release the memo. I mean, you're the expert on the bots, but release the memo. The Russian intelligence services, the Russian bots got energized and engaged in that debate that was meant to help interfere with an investigation against Russia. This is we don't have to go back to 2016.
Joe.
This is a couple of weeks
right
ago.
Now. They never stopped interfering in our politics. They have ongoing information operations on social media designed to disrupt our own debates and our own politics. It didn't end when the election did. It's still going on.
But yet, Senator, we're doing the work for them.
Well,
I mean, they're like they're in the audience.
We are proving some of us to be pawns in a game that the Russians have created the rule book for. And they're still on the chessboard. They're still playing in this game. And we are not seeing what's happening. We are not seeing that they are capturing something that is most precious to us as a country, which is the confidence we have in our democracy and our system of justice. And they have been successful in using Americans who hold positions of power and leadership, supposedly, to be pawns in this game. And let's not lose sight of the fact that we should be thinking about this issue of Russia's interference not only by looking in the rearview mirror at what happened, but looking at 2018 and what is predictable. What is predictable, to your point about the bot interference in the discussion about the memo. 2018 is around the corner.
Okay, so what responsibility does Facebook, Twitter, and other social media sites. What responsibility do they have?
Everyone has a responsibility.
To aggressively seek, not just say, oh, we're going to make this change, we're going to make that change. I mean, you look at Facebook's response, it changed over and over. Oh, what you do about nothing. Oh, it's bad, we might look into it. Oh, I mean, it's still happening. It's still happening on Twitter. When's it going to stop? What can you do? I guarantee you, if this network just did a feed to RT and let that start streaming across, I mean, you all would come in and you would regulate us. So why does Facebook, why does Twitter, why do these big tech giants, why are they still allowed to have Russian bots interfering with a debate that has to do with the investigation into Russian interference in our election?
So I join issue with your sentiment, but I would take issue with the idea that they're being allowed to do this. I think part of what is happening, and it is what we had a hearing, an open hearing, a public hearing in the Senate Intelligence Committee with the social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, and others. And what became very clear to me is that there are still a lot of questions that have been unanswered for us as a committee, but also have been unanswered for these social media sites. What we are hearing now,
you know, they can figure it out.
I believe they can, and I believe they're in the process.
I understand that they've got some pretty smart people there. They could figure this out.
Yeah.
Are members of Congress giving them a free pass because they want their political support? Would never happen. That would never happen.
Well, I mean, let's not be cynical. Let's not be cynical. I can speak for myself and my committee. Right. We brought them before us. We plan to bring them before us again. We have asked them very serious questions, including, for example, if you recall, one of the questions that I was concerned with is how much money have they made off of the legitimate advertising that have been associated with the Russian advertisements? How much money has Facebook and Twitter and everything? And these are answers that we still have yet to receive. Yeah. So this is a process. It's an ongoing process.
Why aren't they answering?
Why can't they give you the answer?
Why are they dragging their feet?
I guess they're in the midst of calculating.
Let's go to,
but we do need those answers.
What do they calculate?
It's a big number.
I mean, we're talking Facebook.
Lots of bots.
There is
we're
not
talking
a number this
Facebook.
big.
If I talk to somebody in my kitchen about jogging, ads about are you over 50 and can still run under 9-minute mile? I swear to God,
You're obsessed with that.
He is obsessed.
That's
It followed you around.
And guess what? Guess what?
Joe, you got to get off
I
social
stopped
media,
running, and guess what? The ads went away.
I know.
It's got to go.
All right. My only point is they know how to target our ads. They know how much money they make.
The ads that come up when my husband goes online and when I go online are two different things.
Oh
it's going to be all golf and football for my husband. For me, it will not be.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord. Okay, John Howman, question for the
Let me ask you this. This sets up the question I want to get to.
Wait, I got to ask a question.
Yeah.
What comes up for you? What, like Devin Nunes inspiration posters? Like it's like quotes?
Yeah, all matters Russia.
Exactly.
So a lot of people think that the purpose of this whole thing was to create the pretext, the Nunes Memo, that is, to create the pretext for Donald Trump to fire Rod Rosenstein.
Yeah.
You think that's basically right?
You know, I can't speculate. I don't know what was going through their head, but I do believe that is a reasonable interpretation of their motivation.
And we know
I do believe that.
And we know that the president at one point has asked his White House counsel to fire Bob Mueller a year ago, right? So I had thought for a year that there was a red line, listening to senators and House members. Yeah. There was a red line. If Donald Trump made a move on Bob Mueller, that would be the red line. He couldn't cross that.
Right.
And that Democrats and Republicans agreed with that.
Right.
After watching last week, especially on the House side, but even to some extent in your body, I'm not sure about that anymore. So I want to ask you whether you think, as a student of the Congress, does that red line still exist? Or could the president get away with moving on Mueller? Based
on the conversations I've had, private conversations I've had with my colleagues on both sides of the aisles, I do believe this would be a red line. Yeah. It has to be. You know, there's been talk about whether this would present a constitutional crisis. Let's understand what, a constitutional crisis is there are different scenarios in which it exists. One is if there are no laws, if the Constitution doesn't speak to the issue. But the constitutional crisis that we're on the verge of is where the three independent co-equal branches of government fail to act in a way that is about a check and balance of the other's power. Yep. And what we are seeing now is the possibility, if we believe that he might fire Mueller, that the President of the United States, as the head of the executive branch, would direct the United States Department of Justice to get rid of of the investigator who was investigating the President of the United States and his conduct.
And Russia. Yeah.
And Russia, of course. And so is the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence.
Okay, so you started this conversation talking about the disintegration of the process. How hopeful are you? How would you navigate the issues pertaining to DACA, Dreamers, given that this process seems to be going right and left and down dead ends?
Yeah.
How are you going to get it done?
And also, will you vote to keep the government open if there's not a DACA deal?
So I am still hopeful. I have again talked with many of my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats, who equally want to find a fix for these DACA kids, right? Who are recipients, who have, and let's be clear about who this population is. They cleared a vet. They were asked questions about their background, criminal background checks, and they cleared the vet and received DACA status. And this administration arbitrarily decided to rescind the whole program. So there is, I think, a great deal of unanimity, frankly, about protecting these DACA recipients. The question is going to be whether people want to then throw other issues into it. I think comprehensive immigration reform, there's no question, must be addressed. It's a separate matter. We need to protect these kids who by March 5th, all of them will lose status. Each day, 122 are losing status.
So will you help the Republicans keep the government open if they don't give assurances to DACA recipients that they're going to get to stay in the country?
Joe, I think it's a false choice to suggest we either keep the government open or we help these DACA kids. I think we can do both. What I think we're on the verge of, and Senator Coons together with Senator McCain, I haven't yet read what they're proposing, but what I hear of it, I think is a very viable
alternative. I'm just curious about the vote. I'm just curious about the vote.
Yeah.
If they come to you and just say it's going to be a straight CR.
What if it comes down to that again?
Going to be a straight CR.
I'm going to have a problem with it. I'm going to have a problem with it. We have to protect these kids. They have been coming in the tens of thousands to the Capitol every day. God only knows how they afford. By bus, train, who knows how they get there. They're sleeping 10 deep on someone's living room floor, walking through the halls of the United States Congress because they believe in our government. And these kids believe that if we see them and hear their stories, we will acknowledge that we should continue to protect them as we promised we would. And so, you know, and I will also say that I think it's the mischaracterization of this issue to suggest there's a left and a right on this. Frankly, I think there's a wrong and a right, period.
Well, I think there are a lot of Republicans who want to get the deal done. Don't understand why it's not happening.
And I do too.
Well, that's, again, the disintegration of the process.
All right.
Care of Donald Trump.
Senator, thank you so much for being with us. It's great to have you here.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Still ahead on Morning Joe, the former director of the CIA, John Brennan, is standing by. He has firsthand knowledge that directly refutes what Devin Nunes claimed in the memo he